Hello, today we'll be showing you how to paint the Claws of Karanak Pack Lord from the Warcry Bloodhunt set. Following this guide will help you get your models on the tabletop in no time, ready to slaughter any who offend Khorne's ruthless nature. So the first thing we need to do is undercoat the model, and for this we've used Grey Seer. It's also a good idea to make sure you've got a pot of Grey Seer to hand, as well as you might need to use it to tidy up some areas of the undercoat before applying a contrast paint over it. The paints you'll need are shown on screen now. Remember, it's your hobby and you can paint however you like. This is just our recommendation. If you're new to painting, you can check out our Citadel Colour Painting Essentials videos to learn all about it. The series is linked in the description box below. The first paint we're going to apply is Carroburg Crimson. We'll be applying this with a small base brush to any of the pink fleshy details. If you're not sure where these are, just refer back to the box art. So don't worry about being neat at this stage, we'll be painting the rest of the model anyway. This shade is a great choice for this, as it's particularly pigmented, so it does a great job of tinting the undercoat and shading the recesses. It behaves similarly to a contrast paint. Now, it might not be that common to see a shade used like this, but it just goes to show how versatile the Citadel paint range is. With that done, we're now going to apply Skeleton Horde. We'll be using this on the bone, the rock, and also the wrappings on the axe handles. Before you apply this, you might just need to tidy up with some Grey Seer. When you're using contrast paint, apply it heavily and neatly, working in small sections. Applying it in this way will make sure we get a consistent finish across the model. Using Skeleton Horde over Grey Seer is a great way to achieve a bone look really quickly. And the next thing we're going to do is apply Eldari Emerald onto the tassels and also some wrappings on the skull. This is quite a dark colour, so we won't need to tidy up the area before we apply it. We're sticking with the small base brush at the moment. It's small enough to help us be neat and large enough to allow us to paint quite quickly. This colour will contrast really nicely against the rest of the model. So be careful not to apply it to too many areas, as we don't want to overdo it. Now we're going to apply Dark Oath Flesh onto the skin. We've chosen to use this particular paint because it matches the box art, but you can use any skin tone you want. This guide is designed to ensure that mistakes can be covered up by the next contrast paint. This will save time in the long run, and you can see here we're not worrying about being too neat on areas like the belt buckle. Now we're going to paint the armour panels using Flesh Tearers Red. Just like before, apply this quite heavily to the model, as it will naturally pull away from the edges and create the illusion of a highlight. If you find that it is pooling too much, just clean off your brush and use that to soak up any excess. Again, we don't need to worry about being too neat here, just avoid the areas that you've already painted. Also, when you're applying contrast paint, be sure to do it with a fairly dry brush. If there's too much water on your brush, this could dilute the paint and result in an inconsistent finish. This method of painting does take a little while to all come together, so don't worry, just trust the process, it'll all be worth it. Once that's dry, we're going to move on to applying Black Templar to the clothing, boots, axe handles, and the gauntlet wrappings. Now, by this stage in the process, quite a lot of the model is already painted, so it will save time if we are a little bit neater now. However, if you do make any mistakes, you can just tidy them back up. We do this by thinning down some Grey Seer with water and applying this carefully over the mistake. After that, thin down the contrast paint you were using with some water and then apply that back over the area too. You might need a couple of layers of Black Templar just to get a complete coverage. Now, there are a lot of black areas on this model, so it will take a while to complete this stage. Stick with it, it'll really look great in the end. Next, we're going to move on to the metallic areas. We're going to start off by applying Runelord Brass to the trim. Now, this is a base paint, so we need to thin this down with a little bit of water before we apply it to the model. And then we'll build it up on the model with a few layers. This will just make sure we get a really nice smooth finish. For these stages, you might find it easier to switch to a small layer brush. This will just help us be a little bit neater. Again, this is quite a large section of the model, so just keep going, take your time and be as neat as you can. And once that's all done, we're going to move on to the silver areas. For these, we're going to use Lead Belcher. You'll probably find that this section goes a little bit quicker than the previous few. This is because the silver details aren't quite as intricate as some of the other areas. Once you've finished using metallic paints, it's always a good idea to change your paint water. Doing this prevents any of those metallic flakes getting into your non-metallic paint and making them shiny. Now that the entire model is base coated, we can apply a shade over the metallics. For this, we're going to use Agrax Air Shade. You can apply this quite heavily and neatly, just like we've done with the contrast paints before. And if there's any excess pooling in those recesses, you can just soak it up with a clean brush. Applying a shade like this means it seeps into the recesses between two colours and helps them all blend together. And the final stage of this guide is to edge highlight using Fire Dragon Bright. For this, we're going to stick with that small layer brush again, as we'll be able to use the edge of the brush to catch the edges of the model, giving it a nice, quick and easy highlight. When you're highlighting like this, don't be scared to move the model around to make sure you get whatever angle is easiest for you. Now this might look a little bit bright to highlight the red with, but when you're only highlighting one area of the miniature, we really want that to stand out. And there we are, your Claws of Karanak Pack Lord is finished and looking fantastic. You can see that our model is based, and if you'd like to find out all about that, you can check out our video on it. Well, we hope you've enjoyed the video and we'll see you next time. Bye!